and other parts of Canada, not just Winnipeg. Jennifer here from Peg City Teachers, and this is our special event with Trevor McKenzie, and here he is, and I'm waving to him, and as soon as he requests, and here he comes. Okay, I'm getting you on here, Trevor.
For Trevor, and we got everyone coming on. It's so good to see you.
Hey, there it is. Oh, I love technology. This is so cool.
I know.
Yeah.
It's so funny. It's like, although I'm like the loudest person in my own ear right now, it's so funny because every time I start a live, it doesn't matter. It's like so exciting that it happens when somebody shows up.
I know, it's like fingers crossed they show up and the technology works, and it's reality TV. So I've got my dog sleeping here beside me and my kids are
Oh, I've seen
downstairs.
your
So if
dog.
something
Very
happens
cute.
behind me right now, we'll
Yeah.
just go with it. It is reality TV, bloopers and all.
Yes, I was my better half and my daughter are downstairs and they're watching and here we go, right?
Yeah, totally. And
So
welcome to my kitchen. We're doing this
it's
from the
very
comfort of our home. It's so crazy that we are in this landscape where we're not in the office, we're not in the school. We're doing this from
no
our homes. It's wild. So welcome to
homes.
my home.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, well, welcome to my home.
Yeah.
This is my messy husband's office, actually, but that's another story. I really like your kitchen, though. It looks good.
Yeah. Yeah. We're very lucky. Yeah. We've gone through some designs over the years, redesigns and remodels. So yeah, and that's the thing. You can't hide the mess, right? You're inviting the
No,
chat into our homes and the
yeah.
bloopers and the mess and everything. So yeah.
And it's an inquiry in and of itself, I think, is the home landscape when we're doing it all from home.
It is. Yeah.
So,
We are learning, aren't we? Yeah, absolutely.
yes. So we've been preparing for this for about a week. Both Colleen and I have been super excited. She's in sort of managing the people that are coming on here. We kind of have a system that goes on, and we actually had some pre-questions that came through,
Awesome.
and she's going to put those in this little question box that I have here. And so we'll maybe get to those at the end. I did see them before, and I think they'd be really perfect coming out at the end. And then for any of you on live right now, please go ahead and press that question box that you see, and you can enter a question because I will check them towards the end. So we wanted to have you on here, Trevor, because we are relatively new at Peg City Teachers. I mean, it's going on to 2 months now, and it has kept us busy and going. But we really wanted to we're both passionate about inquiry and play-based learning, and that's what we do in our jobs for the Winnipeg School Division. But we sort of had this like immediate reaction to the remote learning and just how is this going to work now? We saw that there was an opportunity there. We knew that there was something there for kids to engage in their learning, even more so project-based, and also help teachers and parents navigate that world too, without it adding just ginormous stress to this already stressful time. So you definitely is to us are an expert in this field. We're kind of big fans over here, and I got the book right here
Yay.
too. Thank you. Yay.
Thank you.
Yeah. So we're thrilled for you to agree to come on and just help all of us. It's not just Colleen and I, as you know, but we've got a strong following. We've got a great community over here, and we're just continuing to grow and grow. And so there are so many people that have reached out to me and Colleen separately to talk about and say how excited they are for this time. And so I'm going to kick it off by just saying to you our 2 essential questions. And then I think we're just going to kind of take it wherever it goes, right? But the first one is, how can the inquiry cycle help teachers work smarter, not harder, especially now with remote learning? And then we're going to go into one that, how can the inquiry cycle work for parents who are helping with homeschooling while working from home? And so those are huge questions that probably could be written their own book about right now. But I believe that there is a way here for teachers to provide students with engaging learning opportunities that they're driven to explore. What are your thoughts?
Well, they're 2 great essential questions. They're big questions. They're questions that are kind of unprecedented, right? Like we are in a new educational paradigm. These are things that, you know, the term unprecedented is used quite often in education.
Yeah.
Like, come on, we have never seen this before on such a scope, such a scale. And, you know, I'm not the first person to say it. You know, much smarter and more articulate people have said it. You know, this isn't remote learning, it is crisis learning. And there are so many families who are hurting, so many families that are in a really turbulent space. And I think we really need to lean into this with compassion and understanding as to what's going on at home for our learners. Before we even consider inquiry and exploring their wonders and curiosities, I think just something like you and I are doing right now, whether it's a video chat or an email or a phone call home, before we plan learning too much. And the same thing would happen in the brick and mortar inquiry classroom, wouldn't it? Like, we don't plan out our whole year and we don't flesh it out with all those details until we get to know our students and get to know their interests and their wonders and their strengths and their stretches. And so there's a certain amount of planning that goes into that. Absolutely. It's highly intentional and purposeful, but there's an ebb and flow between the teacher and the learner. And so in remote learning, we need to begin there, right? Like, talk to families, talk to parents, ask them about their readiness for learning, you know, both in terms of technology, access to tech and Wi-Fi, but also, you know, how's your son or daughter feeling about learning? Are they missing their friends? Are they missing the learning that happens in the brick and mortar? And I think that it's important to note, you know, learning doesn't turn off when the bell goes at the end of the day, right? Like, students go home and arguably they're learning much more meaningful and personally relevant things outside the brick and mortar school. So how do we bridge the gap, per se, between the learning that we know is going on at home with regards to what our offering could be? And it starts with questioning and talking with parents, doesn't it? Like, getting to know the landscape at home first.
Well, starting with the question, getting to know the landscape first. Exactly. And I have this here, remote, like little notes for myself, but remote learning, and I saw up there, you know, crisis learning. I mean, whatever you really want to call this.
Yeah.
Exactly. Remote learning at its
Let's
finest.
go with remote learning.
Teaching through a pandemic is what we've been saying on our team. But that there's a lot of giving of stuff, but what is the stuff for? And it's really amazing that you started off this call interview chat with, rather than giving of stuff, start by asking questions, which is at the heart of inquiry and find your essential question, right? So how do we do that? Whether you're like, if you're a teacher, how can you, maybe even if you've been somebody who's been giving lots of stuff, because that is what we do, and that was the best way to support. There's nothing wrong with that. But now you're a little bit more comfortable and you want to switch it a little bit more to get into what matters to the student right now and to the student's family. How would you suggest that a teacher does that?
Yeah, you know, well, it's important to honor exactly what you were referring to there. You know, the quote unquote the stuff. You know, I did it in the past as well, and I think what it lends to is our desire to help. You know, there's a third of the school year or a quarter of the school year that is we're learning through, you know, the remote learning landscape. And I think the initial tendency is to give the students the curriculum, give them the pack or the package or the series of activities and assignments, and set them up on a schedule and offer some sync opportunities or async. And I think teachers have students' best interests at heart when they're doing that. And this is where I think that work smarter, not harder, really can be driven home. You know, although that's your best intention and your best hope for families, you know, I think one of the greatest skills that I've observed when I visit inquiry teachers around the world, when I observe them do what they do, and it's a beautiful thing, being able to come visit teachers in their setting, in their environment. And I'm just that fly on the wall collecting notes and watching them do the magical things that they do. I think one of the most powerful skills that I've seen is the ability to notice. In your observations, what are you noticing is happening before you with regards to your students? Where is the learning going? Where is the wonder and the curiosity? And that's not an easy skill to nurture. You know, that comes over time, to really be, I suppose, comfortable with that nuance and that uncertainty, but also to have the understanding that you need to lean into it. Like, when you see it, go to it, right? It's not a distraction. Like, that's the thing we want to capture. And so I bring that up because in my conversations with parents or with schools as they communicate with parents, that's where I want to question parents. You know, what are you noticing is happening at home? What are the curiosities or the wonders? Where are your learners, your littles, where are your students going, your children going? And tell me about that, because there's an opportunity to connect that with the curriculum. It shouldn't be an either or. It should be let's marry those two together. So that skill of noticing, it works for the inquiry teacher. How do we help parents recognize that so we can support them in that?
I'm like on the edge of my seat right now because I literally, while you were talking, I flipped. I was like, parent hat, teacher hat, parent hat, teacher hat, parent. Like, it was great. I almost started taking notes, Colleen. I did. So take notes for us. So because the parent in me, I was like, oh yeah, okay, yeah. I noticed that Malia's been really into this, and I noticed that Eamon really has like a drive to build stuff. He's the older teenager, right? So he wants to go do that, and then the teacher in me is like, yeah, like let's get out there and start paying attention. Which kids are really excited about getting on the Google Hangouts with their classmates? Which students are like more into like a nature walks and things like photography is something else my son is apparently into now. So I just went back and forth there. But now you're a teacher, right? And I mean, I know you don't have all the answers, but this is part of just our own dialogue too. But now you're a teacher and you're listening to this and you're like, okay, yeah, I could start to notice. But then you're at your own home and you're sort of looking out, and then you're noticing that this pocket here, that pocket there. How would you start to do that? Or what are your thoughts on how you would start to organize your noticings?
Yeah, I think there are a number.
Activate?
Yeah, I love that. There are a number of things we can do right away, and that's looking for themes or categories across the class. So when we are surveying our students and their families, and we're hearing those curiosities and their wonderings, how can we categorize them or clump them together? Partly to just have it make sense, right? Like in terms of our support, once we start streamlining what it is that we're noticing, we can better support them. You know, we could utilize the functions of Zoom, for example, get students to go to different breakout rooms, depending on what that commonality is across their wonderings and their interests, you know, and that's the discourse we have to have with families, right? We have to ask them those questions to look for those areas that are common across those wonderings and those curiosities. I think that's one way we can do it, categorizing. Another way is like, let's just draw the curtain back on our curriculum. Like, what are the learning objectives that are remaining in the course that you're hoping students are going to grapple with and deepen their understanding of? And maybe we can communicate those with students and with families and say, hey, you know, this week, this is a learning outcome I'm really hoping that we can explore together. Are you currently doing something in your wondering or your reading or your curiosities at home that could be aligned with this learning objective? And that's the discourse, right? It's not just I've got the package, I'm going to deliver it to home. The nuance and the hard work really is in the interaction and the talk, the talks with kids and the talks with families. So categorizing always helps in the brick and mortar and in the remote learning landscape in terms of, well, let's find students who can collaborate, and then I can provide them resources to deepen their exploration of that wondering or that category. And then always I say to teachers, do your kids know the curriculum? You know, because the curriculum isn't something we cover. The curriculum is something we explore and we discover together. And so there shouldn't be that Wizard of Oz thing, right? Where the teacher is kind of behind the curtain with the curriculum doing all the hard work. Let's draw the curtain back on the curriculum and get our kids in it and grappling with it and exploring it. And undeniably, like, their curiosities that they have at home could be tied to our curriculum. I think part of what we're talking about is just reframing how we view our curriculum, isn't it? Just reimagining that it's malleable, that it's not ours, the teachers, it's ours, the learning community. And having parents be a part of that and students be a part of that understanding is very important, especially in this different landscape, right? Like, kids would come to us in the brick and mortar for half of their day, and now we're getting them for these little slivers of time. Like, how do we leverage that time? It's really being partners in learning. We really have to be kind of co-designing, co-planning, and doing a lot of listening and noticing in order to present an offering that is in line with students' wonderings and curiosities.
And that is us, which feels challenging, at least for me. You know, that there's like 1 foot in, 1 foot out from like the 21st century learning skills and, how we grew up in school. There's that difference sometimes, it feels like. And I think you just touched on it. Like, this is us, teachers, adults, parents, like modeling how to move into this space where it's the skills of like co-creating, communicating, collaborating. We're being asked to like do that naturally, or we're not even naturally, but we're being asked to do that right now because it's going to be the most effective for all of our kids and our students, right? Is we have to start
let's be honest,
doing
like
this.
we're not being asked, we're being forced. Like, no one invited me to this, global pandemic, right? It's like I'm forced into it. And I kind of say that tongue in cheek, but it's like we're kicked into the deep end here and we have to figure it out. And I think there's tremendous value in sharing with the families and sharing with our students that we are learners too, and we are trying our best to hear you and hear where your interests are. And we want to co-design this. We want to do this together. And I think, first of all, that shows compassion and empathy for our learners, right? Like, if we're going to have compassionate and empathetic citizens one day, don't we need to model that with them, for them?
Oh,
And then that piece of like, well, let's talk about learning. Learning isn't something that I plan everything and I just give it to you and I expect you to do it. Like, that is not the top-down model, or that's the top-down model that we're trying to avoid. How do we have truly a learning community where we're talking about learning and we're planning together? I tell you, I'm excited to get back to the brick and mortar, not just because I'm looking forward to seeing my colleagues and seeing students, but I'm also looking forward to kind of coming back with these experiences that we are having with families to really leverage and amplify what happens in the brick and mortar, because we're all kind of getting a crash course in not just compassion and empathy, but a crash course in noticing and listening and planning together. So talk about kind of reimagining what it could look like in the brick and mortar. We're really getting our like graduate, our master's degree in it right now.
Oh yeah. Well, when you just said forced into it, that's for sure. Some kicking and screaming, myself included at the beginning. So so what I'm hearing too, and let's just see if you're a teacher, parent, but we'll start with the teacher, and you're sitting there and you're feeling very overwhelmed. I know, I'll speak from my own self as well, but I know it's a lot being talked about out there, is the teacher parent right now, right? So that pull between, you have your class and you have your job that you're trying to provide and give support to all the learners out there that are under your care or in your classroom. And then you have your own kids too, where you're trying to work with them and help them be successful, and feeling pulled in two places. And I think what you just said, by starting with a question, or starting with what you notice, that gave me permission almost, like, to just, right? So if I'm a teacher and regardless of the age, and I look out at my class and I start Monday or tomorrow or whatever, just like with a question that just about them and what their experience is in right now, rather than me giving them the stuff from the, that hard curriculum. It's not the hard curriculum. It can be malleable, but I start with what I notice, and then I can move from there. And then also that if I allow the students to lead me, by being interested, inquiring in what I'm noticing, then I can see and fit the curriculum in from there too, right?
Yeah.
So rather than like starting with the curriculum, they lead through, I ask them questions, they lead through giving their answers on what experience is like for them. And then that's when I can start to weave in, rather than telling them from the beginning.
Yeah, I love everything.
This is what we're going to learn.
Yeah, everything you're sharing. I love even what you did with your hands there. Like, there's that identifying of that curiosity, and then we bring the curriculum and we say, hey, this is the standard, this is the objective, right? It's almost like a treasure map, isn't it? It's almost, we are mapping this out together with our learners, and that takes, I have to say, it takes incredible flexibility and choice to have that happen. I'm so proud of what's happening in British Columbia here, from the Ministry of Education down to my school district, to my son's school, and what their teachers are doing. Gosh, if they're watching this right now, I love you. You guys are just killing it. And they're doing such a great job because it's all packaged in flexibility and choice. Nothing is mandated. Nothing saying you have to do this. And I think that that's so critical, because we know what's happening at home. For parents who are teachers, it's the most challenging of working at home positions that I'm seeing right now around the world, to teach your classes, but then to teach your kids someone else's stuff, someone else's material. It's like, oh, you know what it's doing is it's causing a lot of anxiety and a lot of you know, tension at home. Yeah, everybody, you're not the only one, Jen. And you know, a colleague of mine out of Victoria, a fantastic Ingray voice, Tom Huddock. Gosh, I love Tom. And Tom talked to me recently in a Facebook thread about, you know, if it comes down to choosing his child's mental health or his child's success in school, he'll always choose his child's mental health. And what parent doesn't want, you know, of course, like, we're all going to choose our child's mental health, but why is that even a decision we have to make? Like, why are we even having that argument with our kids? And it's like pulling teeth. That should not be happening. And if I say anything provocative or bold in this live, it would be that we shouldn't be adding tension or stress or anxiety at home. We should be providing space and flexibility and choice for families to come into learning at a place that's highly meaningful and relevant, to alleviate all those anxieties that are already occurring in this time of crisis. And I think it's so important to note, like, you know, we're a family of, you know, privilege, right? Like, we have a home over our heads, there's food in the fridge. Like, I'm leaning my iPhone against my MacBook to talk to you in this Instagram live chat. Like, how many families
This is still first world pandemic problems. Like,
truly. But, you know,
it truly is.
That being said, you know, remote learning really makes the landscape of learning, like, it just throws it up in the air, right?
Throws it up,
So many families don't have Wi-Fi, or don't have multiple devices in the home, or don't have the privilege of even having like a space for learning to occur at home that is enticing for a young student. So, you know, with all those inequities, I really do think voice, choice, flexibility is the only way we're going to have students continue to learning at home, that we're hoping will come back to the curriculum. And that's where the conversation happens. Start with a question. In the brick and mortar, we always start with a question. It shouldn't be any different in the remote learning landscape. I suppose it's just a different question, isn't it? Rather than
what do you notice? What do you wonder?
You know, like,
what do you notice? What do you wonder?
Yeah, those are great, right? What are you noticing about your children? What are you wondering about your children? Yeah.
About their families. Like, that's it. There you go. Okay, thanks, City. That was great. Awesome. What do you notice? What do you wonder? That's May and June. There you go.
Well, you know, those two questions are so powerful. You know, I think those are two overlooked questions in education. And sadly, if we ask of ourselves, what are we noticing and what are we wondering as the teacher? And then ask our students, what are you noticing and what are you wondering? It really puts them not just in the driver's seat of the learning, but highly reflective. And if we can capture those reflections and have those be documentations for assessment, that's the sweet spot, I think, really. And that goes back
in the curriculum. It is there. It will. Yes. We just the malleable. I like that now.
With parents right now, once they are noticing and leaning into the curiosities at home, the next piece is, well, let's capture that. You know, parents, take out your phone and take a photo, or record something, or get your child to write that, or make a recording of their own. And those artifacts, that's all evidence of the learning at home. And our job is going to be connect the artifact, the evidence, to the standard and to the curriculum in a really clear way. So the students see it and the parents see it. Here are the connections. So I think that's the next step, to have it make sense for everyone chiming in or listening in here. What can we encourage families to curate as evidence of the learning happening at home?
To curate as evidence of the learning from happening from home. That is, and then that ties back into what you previously said about making it a relationship, and that we're co-doing this, co-facilitating, co-learning, co-teaching. So I don't want to put you on the spot, but I am going to put you on the spot.
Yeah, you do. Of course you do. Don't lie. You want to put me on the spot.
That was like a nice way to say, I'm going to put you on the spot. But, you know, Manitoba, us too, like, we're doing the best we can. Our divisions and our government, they've really rallied and are putting what's the most important at the center of everything, which is everyone's health and safety, which is amazing. But recently with BC, and we learn together the more that we share these, is I have some teachers that I'm also friends with in BC, and they're extremely happy with the way that you guys have rolled out your remote learning. But you mentioned something where it's all about choice, or it's they've packaged it in a way that, can you speak more about that? Because I think that we have that here, but it's really good to point out. So what are you seeing in terms of, you feel that you're getting choice, like as a parent part of it?
Well, it starts from the messaging, and this is so important. If there's a leader listening, an administrator, someone at the ministry
Mhm.
there, it starts with the messaging top down.
Yes.
It totally does. And if the message from our leaders is one of flexibility and listening first, and mental health is important,
Mhm.
choice is important, then that message is going to come right down to the administrators at the district
Mhm.
level and the principals at the school level,
Mhm.
and then
Mhm.
finally the teachers, and the teachers, in my humble opinion, are really craving that message of,
Yes.
it doesn't have to be full of due dates, full of assessments, full of
Mhm.
marking. It has to be done by this date. That's just stressful for
Mhm.
teachers, and
Mhm.
then that in turn shapes the direction that they're going to do, they're going to
Mhm.
go, right. They're going to do
Mhm.
all this stuff in an order,
Yeah.
and they're going to be communicating with parents in that fashion rather than in the questions that we've been talking about in this chat. So
Mhm.
it
Mhm.
starts with leadership, and then some really practical things I'm seeing. I love seeing choice boards. Choice boards are, and they could look like anything. One choice board I'm seeing, it's a Google slide, and it's a beautiful
Okay.
image that some teachers are finding them online, some are creating their own
Yeah.
image, but it's
Mhm.
almost like a digital interactive map where students can go and tap and click on different things, and it takes them down a little bit of a rabbit hole of interest and curiosity that ends with some kind of task, some kind of learning that the teacher is hoping occurs. And from that choice board, teachers are saying, hey, this week I want you to choose 2 of these choices. Of all the, maybe there are 10 that they've given,
Mhm.
I want you to do 2. And layered in that choice board, there's literacy, there's numeracy, there are standards that they've planned.
Mhm.
I guess in the brick and mortar, you would say that all of that gets done over a span of time.
Yeah.
But at
Yeah.
home, we really just want to see what happens, see what we get back, and see where the
Mhm.
interest is, because students will click on and therefore do, in terms of the learning, the things that are really relevant to them and that they can do. And that's really important, to really level the playing field here in remote learning. We don't want
Mhm.
to put students in situations where they are struggling, where they're, treading
Mhm.
water. We want them to thrive and feel
Mhm.
confident and successful
Mhm.
in their learning. So a choice board is one. Rebecca Bathurst Hunt, she's at Inquiry Teacher. She's my co-author of Inquiry
Yeah.
Mindset.
Yeah.
She's
Yeah.
doing these amazing little videos every day. They're like
That's
5 minute to 10 minute videos, and it's such a neat thing. It's almost like a talk show where she has like a little 20 minute theme introduction where she invites her
Mhm.
class into her house, and
Mhm.
then she does like a little 5 to 7 minute lesson where families are watching these videos that are sent home, and they pause the video, and then they go and they do something together, and then they come back and they watch more of the video. And I bring up these videos not because they're tech savvy or they're cool to watch. They're an asynchronous offering, right? And that asynchronous offering is one in which the teachers created an artifact and said, here, families, here's the thing I want you to look at. And families can come to that artifact in any way that they want. They can come at it at 7 in the morning or 7 at night, from an iPad or a Chromebook or a desktop or from their TV. Like, creating that kind of flexibility is going to allow learning to occur. So, and there's a lot of choice in her videos as well. It's just not
Mhm.
that it's an asynchronous offering. There's a lot of choice. Here's a numeracy activity for you to consider today. Here's
Mhm.
your daily physical activity, whether it's yoga
Mhm.
or jumping jacks, or it's beautiful stuff. So, going back, it starts with leadership. Like, what's the message top
Yeah.
down? And that frees teachers up to create some really neat
Yeah.
opportunities for families to have flexibility and choice. You got to
Yeah.
find
And
Inquiry Teacher. Sorry, I just got to give her a ton of
no,
props at
please,
Inquiry
inquiry. I
Teacher.
did what I like. I can. Do you notice me? Like, what is happening right now? Talk about like 20th century, 21st. So I'm going to be able to watch this again as many times as I want, but I'm still taking
You're
notes,
writing. Yeah.
Trevor.
Yeah.
I'm still taking notes.
And shout out really quick for everybody who's tuned in
Yeah.
live here. You know, I see the numbers. It's awesome. I see some friends. I love Winnipeg. Like, I'm wearing my Winnipeg shirt, Middle Province.
Oh, yeah.
And I love Winnipeg, and the fact that we have so many people chiming in here and listening and sharing their thoughts. Colleen, thanks for doing that all for us on the back there. We appreciate it.
Well, and Murray, I just watched Murray. I can't, everyone, people have different names. So I did see Murray as it went past mentioned that the idea of starting the week, like a Monday with the choice board idea, rather than like daily lessons. Okay, there's your work smarter, not harder, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
There's your wonder. I wonder what they'll choose. Oh, I noticed they chose this, right? Like, so that's a really great way to start. Seeing where your students lead you to with the choice board. So things like that, yeah, starting something up at the beginning of the week that will carry you through that whole week and them.
And so really quick, Jen, really quick, I just want to say, if you notice a particular student's going to a specific area in those choices, provide them more of that, right? Like, let's say it's a content specific place they're going, they're going down the skateboarding rabbit hole in your choices, perhaps, right?
Yeah.
Then provide some numeracy to that in your next week's offering.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't give them the choice the next week. You say, hey, I saw that you were really interested in that skateboarding clip that I posted, and your reflection was awesome. Do you want to explore skateboarding more? Like, what if I gave you this really cool skateboarding numeracy for this week to explore? Would you be interested in that? And if a student says yes, then you have their relevance in the palm of your hand. You're like, hey, now I can feed you things that I know you're going to love doing and that you're capable of doing at home. So the second week and the third week, your choices should begin to kind of really be streamlined and sharpened to particular students' interests. And maybe instead of having 10 choices, you give 3 choices, but I'm giving them to that particular student those specific 3 choices because they're really aligned with that. So your workload changes. The more choice you give, and the more you're noticing. Does that make sense?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah,
and it's the thing is that always that just continued to amaze me when I started to do this kind of teaching more and more is that if you ask them, it doesn't matter if they are in nursery or if they're in grade 12, university, it does not matter. If you ask them like what they think or what they need or would like next, they always have an answer. And even if their answer is a genuine, I don't know, because I actually think that's a brilliant answer, a genuine, I don't know, is if you give them some time, they will, if it's passionate, like you said, and it's something that they're really hooked into, they will be able to identify what they need next. So you don't even, what I want to, not only did I like it, like you asked, what I want to go with that is you don't even have to necessarily go find all this stuff you think they'll like and give it to them. You can just keep that dialogue going and asking them what they need, and then challenging them, depending on the age, to see if they can find it themselves, or then by providing the next steps.
Yeah, and I love that genuine I don't know that you referred to. I think this often happens in my classroom and in classrooms I observe, classrooms I visit. If we were to ask students at the beginning of the year, like, what are you curious about or what are you passionate about? All the time I get students who shrug their shoulders and they say, I don't know, like, just tell me what you want me to do. Give me the course syllabus. Tell me what we're going to do so I can get going on it. And in the brick and mortar, I really flip that on its head. Like, I don't give my kids a course syllabus. The course syllabus is something that we co-design together. And there's a certain amount of must-dos and must-knows in each course. But then there's a whole lot of space for student wondering and curiosity and interest and passion. And so on the first day, they understand that this course is going to be different. Like, I'm going to have a genuine say, genuine agency in this course. And so for those students who shrug their shoulders and say, I don't know what I'm passionate about, that's where provocations come into play. And provocations in the inquiry world, it sounds like a dirty word, and it's not. Provocations are like those really rich and enticing entry points into our curriculum. They could be images or videos. They could be field trips. It's such a rich opportunity in this remote learning landscape to get outside. To the families that have access to green space, You know, nature is the learning. It is the inquiry. And if there
Yeah.
isn't green space, if there isn't, you know, an area you can go, play is learning, you know, and recognizing that play is something that we can capture, we can document, and we can return back to teachers and have that be connected to the standards and to the assessment. So, you know, provocations can look like many things, but I always find that when I lead with a provocation, I have the curiosity, I have their wonderment. And, you know, that takes me time to choose awesome provocations, absolutely. But that's where we work harder and not smarter. I take the time finding and curating those provocations. And then when I share them with students, the relevance is there. It's like the curriculum all of a sudden is living and breathing because it's in the students. It's their relevance, right? So provocations
and
are
you're
critical.
doing that work for us, because for those of you who don't, and I'm sure everyone on here does, but for those of you who are watching or stumbling upon us, go follow Trevor, TNT Mackenzie, right?
Yeah.
Because you share a lot about, you put the provocations on your Instagram, and then you even talk about how you can save them in the collections. I've seen that a few times in your feed.
Yeah.
So when you say us, like, there's another work smarter, not harder. Not only like we're starting with that or with providing with the students, but you're even out there doing that work for us as well. So
well, you know,
yeah,
early on in my career, I've taught
that's
for 20
working
years.
together.
Yeah, I've taught for 20 years, and early on in my career, collaboration was like the staff room and the photocopy room, and connecting with the teacher at my door. She was maybe my neighbor, and as kids were coming in, we would chat and collaborate. And now collaboration is not just that. Now it's collaborating like this as we are. It's collaborating on Twitter and Instagram. And I think every teacher has something to share. Every teacher has not just a voice, but something that they're doing that is working. And I beg of you, please, folks watching, share that. You know, get on social media, share something that's working. And we're all going to find ways to kind of curate that. And in this example, I'm using Instagram in part to share provocations that I see teachers using or that I'm using. You could archive them right there to an Instagram collection so that you could in turn use them with your students. And it's super easy. And that's, provocations. That's where I find really good bang for my buck in terms of prep. If I could find really rich, engaging, authentic provocations, oh my goodness, the next steps are so student driven. Like it's so engaging for the kids that everything else kind of falls into place if I nail that first initial choice or you know, curation of that provocation.
So I'm hearing, and I'm watching our time, although this has been amazing, and I love the engagement and the viewers and everything. We do have a few questions to get to, and a fun way to pick our winner from our book giveaway still. But if we were to kind of put it in a little bit of a summary, start with a question always, but more importantly, asking the students right now and the families how they are doing. So get inquisitive about them. What do you notice and what do you wonder? And then from there, go into providing them the opportunities to follow what they're most interested in at this time.
Yeah, and you know,
do you provide opportunities, or do they just go?
Yeah, well, a bit of both. You could provide opportunities. I think those choice boards, that flexibility and choice, that helps us kind of package our offering a bit and the curriculum in a way that students are going to find those relevant entry points. And if there's space in that choice board for students to identify what they're curious about at home, what they're wondering about, and connect it there, I think that's a fantastic next step. And also that piece of helping families document what it is that they're seeing. Like, what can they use as evidence of the learning that's going on at home, and in turn share with teachers that we can use as part of our assessment and our feedback and our reporting. So I think it starts with questions, like surveying families and getting to the heart of what's possible. What does learning look like? Getting to that, what are you noticing? What are you wondering about? What are your children curious about? And as a father here, I'm seeing a ton of things that are driving the learning at home. And I'm just leaning into those, partly because I'm an inquiry teacher and I know how valuable that is. But also as a parent, like, I don't want to pull teeth with my kids at home. I don't want to argue about school and learning. So if that is capturing your interest, let's go there, because I know the assessment is there. I know the curriculum is there, right? And I think
Yeah.
that's what we're really
And
asking those listeners to consider is see that your curriculum is happening at
is
home.
there.
It is there.
Yes.
It is there. So
Let
lean into
them
that.
go, and then you plug the curriculum. Exactly. And you just said something too that I've been starting to work with that's been helped a lot for the parents out there that are teaching hat and parent hat is use your kids. So if you try things out that you would try out with your class, right? So if you have kids at home and you're like, okay, I teach grade 3, teach grade 7, whatever it is, and you want to start with a choice board, try out a choice board with your own kids, right? And see how that goes. Or whatever you're working on, what you're noticing or wondering with your own class, try it out with your kids. Like I have found that I can engage in my own inquiry practice with my kids with the same things that I'm doing, say, for Peg City teachers or the teachers I support. So parents that are teachers, your home can be your classroom too.
Yeah,
right?
and a lot of the schools that I work with, helping parents understand what inquiry looks like and feels like and sounds like, it's critical, right? Like having parents understand why things are changing and what the classroom looks like, because quite honestly, the classroom looks quite different than the classroom that they were in when they were students. And so,
Yes.
informing
Yes.
parents, and I just want to give this book a shot. I didn't write this book. This is The Self-Driven Child. I love
Yes.
this book.
Yes.
And I bring this book up because obviously it's aligned with inquiry, but I also love it because as a parent, it is so fantastic to read about why it's important to give our young people, our children, agency and allow them to make some mistakes. Like what is happening with the child's brain at different points in their development, and how can we nurture that? How can we support our young people so they are more mentally kind of confident and self-aware. So this is a book often that schools that I work with will do a book club with parents. We won't give them this book. Like this is for teachers, right?
Teachers,
and we won't give
yeah.
them this book. This book is for teachers. This is the one for parents that is aligned with these others. And so we'll do book clubs with parents who are willing and who are keen to read about the benefits of agency. Yeah. And so I'm not assigning for any parent watching, I'm not saying go read this book now, all 300 pages of it. But, when you have time to connect this conversation around inquiry with parenting, there's some really, really powerful, clear, research-driven ties that allow us to see that what's happening at the school and what we're trying to do in the brick and mortar and remote learning, it's really what's natural in terms of what the learner, what's happening with the brain and what the learner needs and what the learner doesn't need. And again, poke, so forgive me, the learner doesn't need to sit in a desk for 8 hours a day, sitting still, being told what to do. And this is the learning.
Being given more stuff.
There needs to be some agency. Yeah. There needs to be movement and play. Yeah. And we have to celebrate when students fall down and when they struggle. That's like the golden stuff, right? We need to lean into that. So The Self-Driven Child, that's a great one. I get no revenue from endorsing this book. It's a powerful book.
That's just a really good book.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, so I'm going to go to the question box now. Trevor, have you used this? It's pretty fancy.
I have. This is my first Instagram live session. I love it. You guys have inspired me.
Oh my God, it's amazing. Yeah, it's awesome. Okay. This is a good, I feel like we might have hit on it, but I'll say it, how to engage reluctant middle school age learners in this teaching in a crisis, aka remote learning. The choice board, to me, that would be an AMI, but is there anything else that you think of when you think of middle school engagement?
It's funny when I think of middle school kids, and I'm going to paint a really broad stroke here, so forgive me, but I hear from a lot of teachers this qualm about video games or YouTube, and all my middle school kids want to do is play video games and spend time on YouTube. And I challenge teachers to consider, well, couldn't that be rigorous? Couldn't that have depth? Couldn't that be an inquiry? Isn't there really rich learning there that goes beyond just what perhaps on the veneer looks like simply playing a game or trolling or, you know, the rabbit hole of YouTube. There's rich opportunity for learning to occur in those vehicles. And so I think our challenge is to shed light on where that inquiry could go and where that learning can go. You know, I'm seeing it with the kids that play Minecraft. Like they're building these worlds and these civilizations, and there's so much richness there that, like, I want to celebrate that. Like, let's go deeper into that. Not like literally, but what can we do with that? You know, what kind of careers are in those fields? What is it doing to the way that we interact face to face if we're spending too much time in the online realm? You know, are there ethical questions we need to ask ourselves about things like YouTube and video games? Like, there's so much depth that could occur with some topics that I think, you know, as an adult, we think are superficial, but for a middle school student, it's like the thing that is just driving their existence. So how can we meet in the middle? How can we say it's not superficial? What you're doing is amazing. Let's go deeper into that. And so, you know, that's a bit of a broad kind of commentary on that particular question. But I encourage teachers to lean into the interest.
I can already hear my almost 14-year-old being like, "Hey, Mom, this guy's cool. Like, he could be my teacher."
Yes,
did he just say that I can learn? You know, did he just say I can learn from video games? So, you know, there's me actually as a different way to look at it, because I'm right there with that. And you're so right with the YouTube and the video games. And I'm going to add too a little bit to this question around get them connected with their friends somehow. Like, I was on my university course last night and we did Zoom breakout rooms. Okay, I didn't really feel like doing it at a night course, but was it cool? Like, so we broke out and we went and chatted in a group and we came back to the class. And so I think for middle years, sometimes, especially when they get into the grade 7 and grade 8, they'll shy away, some of them, from connecting with their peers. But if they're sort of invited to in that way, they'll be more engaged in connecting. So help them connect with their peers somehow, whether it's through online or gaming, or
you know, I just
a project
with
together.
My 7-year-old in his Zoom chat recently with his teachers, and his teachers essentially invited a small group of six students in the Zoom chat rather than all 24, just 6, and I'm pretty sure they chose those 6 for some specific reasons, right? And in this particular circumstance, I think they chose those 6 because they're all really keen on sport, whether it's soccer or basketball or hockey. And so when you get those 6 coming into this unfamiliar collaborative space, and then you ask them, "Hey guys, what have you been doing at home? How are you spending your time?" The teacher knows how they've been spending their time. It's on basketball or soccer or hockey. And that's the invite. The kids are like, "Oh, you want to hear about what I've been doing with basketball? Let me show you." And out come all those artifacts, right? Like, this is my basketball card collection. This is my encyclopedia I made on hockey players that I'm really into. You know, and so, you know, how we bridge collaboration, it shouldn't just be, "Hey, I'm asking these 6 kids to come because I told you so." It's, "No, I'm choosing those 6 because there's a rich connection amongst them," right? It could be because they're friends. It could be because English isn't their first language and they all are using similar strategies to succeed in learning. It could be because they're all keen on a similar topic, whether it's Fortnite or basketball or what have you. So I think collaboration needs to be
building
more than
in Minecraft.
Totally, absolutely.
Okay, and then I have another one on my other device here. The question, where are you? Here we go. What are some, oh, well, we covered this. Wow, we're good. What are some ideas to include parents or families into an inquiry journey for a student? And I think that you said it when you said for to come into contact together, like the parent and the teacher talk about what they're noticing their child, student, adolescent, whoever it is interested in, and start that dialogue. Would you say that?
Yeah, I'd agree. I think also, you know, and my colleague out of Seattle, Kimberly Mitchell, she's an amazing inquiry voice. She said this recently in a webinar that I was a part of, and she said, this global pandemic has given us the curriculum. Like, this global pandemic has said, here's the relevance. Like, kids are living and breathing this. And, you know, I look out my living room window And in Victoria, where we live, our local newspaper has sent out in all the newspapers a massive Canadian flag, but rather than a maple leaf in the middle, it's a big red heart. And families throughout Victoria have taken out that page, that Canadian flag with a big red heart, and they've pasted it, they've taped it to their windows of their homes. And it's to recognize and celebrate anyone in the healthcare field or anyone who's making a sacrifice right now to help us get through this tough time. Like that is the curriculum. Like I could ask my children, what's the symbolism of that? Because that's a symbol. Can you talk to me about that? What does that mean to you? And then if I can curate that and document that and have that be evidence I can give back to the teacher who's looking for like, an engaging paragraph. If the engaging paragraph is about something highly relevant, the assessment is going to be killer, and it's going to be awesome learning for the student because it's highly relevant to them. So this global pandemic has handed us the curriculum. Like, what are we noticing? What are we seeing in our children at home, and how can we capture that and share that with teachers? It's an amazing opportunity for us to partner with families and communicate really clearly and listen to them, right?
And then I got half teachers who want to try inquiry learning during remote teaching. I also feel like we covered that, right? Start with what you notice, start with what you wonder. You just said a great example. I mean, in Winnipeg, we're doing rainbows and teddy bears in our windows.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's one way, and that comes from Val.
Yeah. I think another way is to yeah, I think another way is to actually make choice boards for teachers, right? Like it could be a template for a choice board. It could be, a choice board. If you know a teacher at the grade 5 level at your school needs a choice board, you could make it for them. And part of the barrier with a choice board is quite honestly, it may be the digital literacy skill that the teacher hasn't sharpened yet. Like, how do I navigate Google Slides? How do I embed icons and have them be connected to hyperlinks that takes kids to another place? And that does take an understanding of the specific tech tool. So if you're someone who's savvy in an area and has a little bit of, a leg up in certain areas that we've talked about, provide that support by taking away that barrier for your colleague. Like, here is a choice board that I use. Check it out. If you want to talk about how I made this, let's jump on a Zoom, let's jump on a Hangout, and I'll walk you through it, right? And I think if we can remove those barriers for our colleagues, they're going to go down that path of, providing flexibility and choice. So I guess, on a broader scale, can you identify what they need? Rather than me identify what they need, can you lean into and ask them what they need to remove some of those barriers, and then just give it to them? Like, do the hard work, give it to them, and that barrier will be removed pretty quick.
And also, I was thinking too with that, if there's different types of support teachers, whether you're Division 1 or you're one at a school, but borrow some kids, right? So if you also want to try some of the things that we've talked about here with a group of kids, that might be a way that you can support and help them learn about inquiry and remote learning, is want to go on a journey yourself with a group of students. Maybe there's a group that you could work with too, and play things out, and then you could dialogue about that together and maybe try it together.
Yeah, a lot of the work I do with schools around the world, that's a piece, is we get teachers to observe one another in inquiry, right? So it's just not me coming in and watching. It's a group of teachers coming in and watching what's happening in the room and identifying what's working, identifying things that they're not doing, that they've seen, that they want to bring back to their practice. And of course, the teachers we're coming in to observe, they're happy to invite us in, right? They're happy to say, yeah, come and watch me. Yeah. I don't have it all figured out, but I'd love some feedback. Yeah. And if that works in the brick and mortar, why wouldn't that work here in remote learning? Of course it would. Yep. Hey, I've got Miss Scott today. She's going to come into our Zoom and she's going to talk a little bit. I'm going to listen to her, and then we're going to use the breakout function. So this is going to be fun. It's different. We're both learning.
My
Are you guys ready
out
for
there,
it?
I'm
and kids are like,
available. I'll do it.
Yay.
Okay, awesome. So, okay, now it's our time is pretty much
I can't hear you. Can you hear me? No, I can't hear you. I can't hear you. No. Can you hear me? Oh, you can hear me, but I can't hear you guys. Oh no. That's hilarious. Other people can't hear either. Peg City, we lost your audio, it looks like. They can hear me. Oh, you can hear me, but they can't hear Peg City. Oh, that's hilarious. We still can't hear you, Jen. That's okay. We're having fun. Stick with us, friends. Don't go anywhere. She's trying to troubleshoot, and yeah, just stick with us here. We'll see. Thanks, Tim. Tim's suggesting cutting the Bluetooth on your phone, and then your phone mic will just go on. Can you go? No, not yet, Jen. Can you go? Did you go to your settings, your Bluetooth settings, and turn off your Bluetooth settings? So go to your settings on your phone, turn off your Bluetooth.